What if you could help others to find the power to heal themselves? Physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
When I started teaching my classes, it was in 2002, and I was just doing the past life regressions and contacting the subconscious part. But then as the time went on and we found how powerful this was and what we could do with it, a lot of the students began saying, you know, advanced past life regression doesn't really tell what it's all about. This is so much more than that. We think you should change the name. So it was a few years ago we decided to change the name to Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And this is the healing technique that we've now been teaching it, well, since 2002, that's 12 years.
What if you could time travel with them? Visit mythical places or angelic realms, other worlds, other galaxies. Help others to speak to their higher selves. You can. Dolores has taught thousands of people from across the world how to use QHHT, and now you can learn her method by going directly to dolorescannon.com. And don't forget to mention the discount code MORETALKS.
Established over 100 years ago, Watkins Books is one of the world's oldest and leading independent bookshops specializing in esoterica. We have the widest selection of esoteric books in the UK, and our friendly and knowledgeable staff are here to assist you in a unique ambience of our shop. So come and visit us in the heart of London as we're open every day.
The comments and views expressed on The More Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the view of Kevin Moore, The More Show, or this radio station and its affiliate or sponsors. This show is for entertainment purposes only.
Broadcasting from the UK and across the world online. You're now watching the UK's only alternative late night talk show, and I'm your host, Kevin Moore. For the next hour, I'll be covering subjects that will open up your mind and provide you with information you may have never heard before. On today's show, I'm about to be joined with my guest, Gerard Rosen. Now, Gerard is the author of Drowning in the Light, Memories of the New Age. Now, Gerard takes the reader along an exhilarating dive into the depths of the sea of consciousness in search of his soul and the structure of reality. Now, along the way, Gerard shares his experiences with some of the most profound thinkers and renowned artists of our time, with a perfect blend of dark humor and deep spiritual wisdom. Gerard Rosen, welcome to the show.
Great to be here.
Thank you for coming on today. Really appreciate you sharing your story with the audience as well. Now, as I was just reading the intro off there, obviously the book's called Drowning in the Light, which, great title, by the way. Aren't we all drowning in the light sometimes, trying to work it all out?
A little bit. Or in the dark. We're in the dark looking for the light.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into the dark as well. That's a good point.
Absolutely.
Just now, I said this off air as well. I just want to get straight into what the message is in the book as well. Now, you're over in the US.
Yes. California.
And I've gone through the book, and there's a lot of traveling involved in this story as well, which I found quite interesting actually. So before we get into too much about the book, what is the core message of what you do, if there is one?
Well, I like if there is one, because I've been involved in publishing, and I'm an author, and books around global trends and money and security and energy and all these kinds of things that I really love and topics. But this book came out of me basically because I was nearly dead last year, and all of a sudden it was like, well, do this book. it just, it was really clear to me that this was something that needed to come out. And my agent, who I work with in business world, also was like, well, you got to publish this. And so I thought afterwards, well, is there a message? Because I'm really involved when I work with people, it's very, very clear. I mean, what are you trying to communicate? But this is a story. And actually, when my agent read it, I sent it to him the morning he was going to the Frankfurt Book Expo, and I said, hey, by the way, if you ever have a chance to read this, if you're like bored, there's a story, because I wasn't really focused on it, and he couldn't put it down. And I think what the experience was the next morning, he said, we've got to publish this, is I think what he sees and what other people see are different messages, but there wasn't intentional. My story, which is really my life, and it's not my life story like a memoir by an unknown or whatever. It's a story that's a universal story that many people participate in their own way. So I figure when they read it, they will have their own observations. And so I would say one of the things that happens in the book is I start awakening to, well, what is the nature of reality? And so I go very deep into that. And from the art world, I end up in Peru and ingesting psychoactive. I mean, this is all in the early 80s. And I came out of that, all this experience and traveling and looking underneath, like the Wizard of Oz, like who's behind the curtain, until I discovered it was, well, we won't go there yet. But the journey itself, what people have is a connection to a period of history that we can call the New Age. The subtitle of the book is Memories of the New Age. Okay. And for some people, that's a question, like, memory, like, is it over?
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. And when you say you were well, I suppose you were near death's doorstep. Were you near death's doorstep last year? Actually, am I writing you off?
Oh, well, actually, the journey of my life has been figuring out that matter is an illusion, that it's a projection. Whether I was in fourth grade sitting in my desk and looking, and saying, oh my God, maybe this is all like a big Jell-O mold and we're all like pieces of fruit and we're all connected. I was like seeing that we're all connected. There's just a distinction of frequencies, and I didn't do well in math, but I was kind of, So where I went to in that place, I became an artist, and through the artist lens, I began to actually look and see, well, what's under the surface, which led me to physics, like early, in the 80s or late 70s. And then I had these experiences, like doing yoga. I didn't even know what was going on, and I just burst into energy. And so from these experiences, I began to say, well, what is the nature of matter? What is the nature of reality? And so that journey, I think a lot of people examine, but my examination went so far, where I'm working with, these very disturbed children on some ranch in the middle of nowhere, and, one's throwing a rock on my head, and these things are happening so that I could see myself and my shadow, and the book goes through that. But where it goes to in the end, where the answer to your question was on death's doorstep, I have always thought I was just completely healthy because I created my own reality. I drink green drinks since the 80s, But after a divorce in 2008, I woke up with bruises all over my body. And, it's all a holographic projection, but I find myself then being diagnosed with a rare blood disease. So the book goes there because that's how the book came out. And the book came out was, I was actually, it was kind of asymptomatic, but for like 4 or 5 years. And I'm going to answer a question you asked earlier, like, is there a message? Probably the message isn't coming from my mind wanting to change somebody's mind, but through my experience of 4 years and having a doctor, and I had already been in the hospital, and of just doing everything natural. And where it kind of ends is in the parking lot of, I don't know if they have, I know they have one in London, Whole Foods, getting a kombucha. I don't know if you're familiar with, kombucha is like the hottest, latest fad, which is basically, a probiotic drink. But what was happening was my insides were bleeding, and my wife, she was like, I don't know what we're going to do with him. We'll just find him on the, in the parking lot of Whole Foods with this kombucha. And I was rushed to the hospital, and I had 0 platelets. So yes, I I was inches away of my brain bleeding and going into, a coma.
Wow.
But because I believe in natural healing, and Monsanto is the demon and all that, and I get it, and GMOs may have, destroyed my health or whatever, my need to be natural and organic brought me to the place where I finally hit the 0 point. We all hit that ultimate 0 point, but I still have a few years left.
Well, yeah. I mean,
So,
if that
I'm really healthy now.
well,
Great,
yeah. If that experience had never happened to you, then you wouldn't be here today to share your story, which is quite obvious in one sense. So what has the cure been for what you've been going through? Then, I mean, you seem very well right now, but
absolutely. Well, the cure after drinking quarts of papaya leaf extracts and many years of all the light workers and healers giving me clues to what's going on, unsolicited, finally it came down to a little yellow pill that in the US a month would be about $10,000.
yeah.
But I don't even forget I wake up every morning, everything's great. I can still have a green drink and I take this little pill. So out of all of this, my ass is saved by the pharmaceutical company. Isn't it amazing? Why? Because they spent billions of dollars trying to figure out how, and these biological medicines. So it's like, that's part of my awakening, but that is not a message of the book. Like, go out and forget about, dump your kale out and just go get some good drugs. No, that's not the message. That's not the message. There is no message, but when people read it, they find their own. They say, oh my God, I was in New York in the 70s too. You knew Kerouac? I mean, you got him into his first art show? Oh my God, I went to the Whitney. I'm like, yeah. Oh my God, you were in Peru taking whatever? I'm like, yeah. So I'm kind of like that movie Zelig. I showed up everywhere.
Yeah, you do. Well, that's the way the book goes as well. That's it's interesting because, okay, so you really do have one foot in this physical reality, and you have one foot in the spiritual realm in a sense, but you're not both feeding one realm or the other. Would you find you're more balanced now, in a sense?
That's a great metaphor, but let me share one that I think would be real visceral. I think it's like this. I think on the higher end of the higher frequency, the high end of the spectrum, we're pure light and spirit. On the lower end of the spectrum, it's very, very dense. It's like Trump. I'm sorry, whatever. Or the dump. Where all the lower frequencies sort of. But you know what? The low notes on a keyboard and the high notes, that's how you compose music. So the question is, if you're all the way down on the high notes, it's really hard when it starts getting down to low notes, But to have the full spectrum is to experience that we only occupy this much of the electromagnetic spectrum. So certainly our spirit lives on beyond death. Because how could it not? How could anything not exist if it's in existence? So those are the things that kind of come out of me in the book. And when people read it, they're like, wow, this is like Eckhart Tolle. It's like, no, this is like me suffering. Maybe that's why he wrote his book.
Well,
the suffering is the beauty, because the darkness is an illusion until you turn the light on, and then you see what it really is. So that's kind of what my book is. I'm trying to guess, throughout my journey, what is this? Why do we destroy our planet? Why are we doing this?
How much in all these years, I mean, I was born in '78. You were up and around and working in '78, so I'm still on my journey, and I'm still trying to, think. I'm still saying even today, I'm saying to myself, is there something greater than this reality? Is there really? And there are days when I do feel there is. There are days when I struggle with that. There are, but I always come from that space that there is to answer my questions, which is funny in a sense. I'm actually really, trying to get into the law of attraction right now, which is very much in that reality of consciousness. It really is. But do you how long was your struggle for, if you did go through one, of really trying to figure out, was there something greater than this? And why were you trying to figure that out as well? What was the draw to do that? Was life just really unhappy for you, and you were trying to find a better way?
Do you know, I don't think it was that I was unhappy. I had very loving parents. I grew up in a, I guess you can consider like an upper middle class type of, normal America in the 50s and 60s and 70s. And then what happened was, I think what happened was I looked at the possibilities that existed, and they didn't really fit a higher vision I had. And for some reason, my higher vision was that I knew that I could actually impact and transform the world, which really came from the 60s and being a teenager, when I'm like 14 and 15, and I'm dreaming of these things, of being with the Velvet Underground and Andy Warhol and all this. And then I find myself in the 70s in the wherever I was, and there's Warhol, and I'm like, well, what, okay, so I'm creating my reality. And then within that, it was like, well, big deal, well, I want to do what he's doing, but I want to really not just do it for my ego or for the ego of the artist. I want to transform the world. And what I discovered in New York in the 70s, in the late 70s, these people, Keith Haring, Jean-Michel Basquiat, they were a part of my scenery. I knew them, I connected, that one was at the School of Visual Arts, and we did an art and thing. But I saw what happened to them when the fame hit. And that's when I left New York, and I left the art world, because there was an emptiness. What happened was the art world to me represented the deconstruction of all of who I was. And people that were making art then were reflecting that. There was a beauty in that deconstruction. I think that's why pop art is such a spectacular art for people that grew up in my era, and I think that's. But what I saw was the emptiness, and actually what happened was, I had psychedelic experiences in New York, and I write about it in my book, where I'm tripping on like a gazillion mushrooms, 3 a.m, and I cross the corner down the Lower East Side, and a kid puts a gun in my belly or my chest, and I'm like going to give him my money, and then I go into this like place where time and space don't exist. So these experiences, I finally, when I wrote it, I realized, they are kind of odd and different. And when people started reading it, they're like, well, this is a good read. So as far as answering your questions about the dark nights of the soul, those experiences that I write about, they're just experiences over many, many years. And generally, I think it wasn't an unhappiness as much as a deep search for meaning, and not finding it in the world that I saw around me. So I needed to look a little deeper in that world. And that forced me into the spiritual. Like you talked about getting into the law of attraction. Well, I actually really feel that all the experiences we create, good, bad, and indifferent, they're there as like an engine for our soul, or whoever it is higher that lives beyond this lifetime, to grow and evolve. So my blood disease, or working with criminally insane and being choked to death, and group homes and things I did earlier on, besides, going off to the mountains of Peru and nearly dying and those things. I think the touch with death, which makes the story really interesting, is that thing that drove me all along, because I think that's why we really, 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 really search for the spirit, because we know this is a temporal experience. And if this is it, man, wow.
Yeah, absolutely. So what would you say then, if you could sum it up? What would you say is your purpose right now? What drives you? What is your purpose?
That's a really, really great question, and I'm actually working on several books with authors around that topic. One is called Dying on Purpose, and that's with somebody that actually had a near-death experience, and the message was, you're not done living. And I'm like, well, yeah, dying on purpose. And others about higher purpose, how to fund your higher purpose. And what I'm learning is, it's not necessarily so grandiose, although I kind of have that for myself for the fun of it. It really is a service in the moment. And like right now, this connection that we're having, because you're choosing to have a conversation and make it public and share with people. And whoever listens to it, whoever experiences it, will get what they can. So I kind of take that on. But what I really, really love doing is, my company is called Dream Sculpt. And what we're about is, we realize that books are not it. It can't just be a book. Right now, like what you're doing, we're a personal media brand, each one of us. And we have a personal media platform. And so I help people build that with a book. And the book is, is like that centerpiece or the hub. But like what you're doing, these are like the spokes on it. We get out, we connect. And I feel what happens is when people are able to really, live their joy and the purpose. And one of the things, I had a TED Talk years ago in Malibu in LA in maybe 2013 or something like that. And it was called The Personal Media Revolution. You can find it on YouTube. And what I was saying really is when I grew up, communication was one way. Where we are now is we can be not only the consumers of media, but like yourself and myself, we're the producers of it. So I'm here to help people produce it, because the more positive energy coming from all over as it is now, the more we'll see the world reflect that.
It's so different nowadays. I mean, to be able to do for us to be able to have this conversation right now and be able to broadcast it later on YouTube as the media, the platform to broadcast it on, these weren't around 7 years ago, No. So and the technology is so much cheaper now. It's better. Things have shifted so much. They really have, and I think. Yeah, I mean, does that mean that, larger audiences have access to it? Well, I don't know if larger audiences want access to it, but it's there for those who it will help. That's the thing. And it's there for those in the future as well, generations to view back these messages as well. That's what I always think, that these will never go away. They'll never disappear. Hopefully what we're saying is going to be a bit timeless. But it's not everyone's cup of tea, what we're talking about right now. But that doesn't matter. What matters is we're doing it for our own reasons, for our own journey, which is in effect of being of service.
Who isn't? I mean, that is really the key, is instead of the ego experience of I'm creating my own reality, wow, it's more like we're participating, and whatever we create will actually, our inside reflect out on the outside will change our outside, and outside will become more of what our inside wants to be. It's sort of like the universe can almost rearrange itself to outpicture what and that's that law of attraction. But there are so many details that it's not so easy. Otherwise, people that were heavy would wake up in the morning and say, you know what, I want to lose 10 pounds. And it's just, matter is not that malleable, and, finances and things like that. But I think what's happening is there's a quickening. I don't know if you notice this.
I do.
Where you can kind of skip steps. And I'm not talking about steps that you need to grow, but I'm talking about steps that make it a longer process. So maybe we're actually, like I said earlier, that there's the higher frequency, like the higher notes in the keyboard and the lower notes, personally, in my personal reality. Maybe there's also one in our collective or our global reality. And maybe we really are, as the New Age people would say, ascending. Maybe ascending, really what it means is just getting to a higher, faster rate of vibration. What does that mean? That could be very flaky. What is vibration? You can experience it. It's like when you're not so heavy. We all know that. In our mind, things quicken. It's like when you travel, all this grace happens. Like, oh my God, all these things are happening. And then you get back home and it's like sluggish again.
Yeah, it's very true what you say there. It really is. I think it's a lifetime's worth of journey, and, even then, do we actually have the answers? I mean, it's almost like this nature of reality is so elusive. It's almost like it almost doesn't want to be really truly discovered on its true nature of what it is. It's like we're not supposed to know, in a sense. I think there's ways in. I think there's ways for our own personal, just as you know, even you doing mushrooms and everything else that you've done. Right, that was just one way in, and on all the other adventures that you've been on to try to look into this nature of reality. But it's not an easy one to tap into, even after 30 years or more of you looking into it. It's yeah.
Nobody ever figures it out. It's not to be figured out. You totally got it right. That's why they call it the mystery. Actually, I don't practice a specific religion or anything. I did grow up Jewish, and what I found interesting in all the mystical paths were these kind of clues. And there was a clue in the Kabbalah, really, basically, of the nameless and the faceless of God. But my experience, my own personal experience that is sort of reflected in the book in some ways, is that everything is in nothing. And that's why I kept having these experiences I would call the 0 point. And what that meant to me was like I was inside of creation where there's nothing moving, where it's still and infinite and eternal, and everything is inside of it. That sounds really out there. But the thing is, if you look at physics, what you see is that if you get beyond the molecular level and go into the atomic level and start going into the subatomic, you start seeing space. As Deepak would say, the 99.999% empty space. That's who we are. Well, what does that mean, empty space? But what it means is that subatomic reality seems to actually be a projection out of a state that could be identified as a vacuum state, perhaps, where there's no matter. But what they discover is possibly all energy exists and all possibilities. And it starts looking like, when you examine it, like this mystery, this field, this nothingness, this infinite and eternal everything. But if we traced who we are, and that's what we're actually flowing out of, a projection out of, then as experience I had on my floor in New York City and Soho before I went to Peru, doing a yoga posture before yoga was a multi-billion-dollar industry, I dissolved into nothingness. And it was extremely scary. But years later, a Zen monk said, "Oh, you had self-erasure." And I'm like, self-erasure. And that self-erasure is that experience that everything is nothing and nothing is everything. And there has to be peace there. And I think that's why we meditate, to tap into that kind of still place. And I think that's where we actually find God, perhaps, if that's what we're looking for.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
I think you
divinity.
Yeah, however you want to personify it. Yeah, I mean, it's got many terms, hasn't it? That's right. I mean, God is probably a name that's got a lot of baggage with it, some people may say. But yes, it's that.
Oh, God.
Yeah. It's that. It's yes,
God forbid.
God forbid. Yeah. Well, it's like, as we've said in this interview, it's unnameable, isn't it? Really, what we truly are. It really is.
Yes.
I say this in
and the search. You will never find it.
No.
There is nothing to find.
No. So why are we looking then? I think we're looking because, but this is only my tiny understanding of it right now. Why do I even look? Well, I suppose I'm trying to find a better place to having the moment now. I'm trying to have a life that is going to be empowering to myself and others, be of service to myself and others. A life that's tries to help make sense of why things happen like they do. And to get some comfort in there. So by looking into the nature of the reality of who or what we are or I am, I find it very empowering in some sense. It doesn't take the pain away from any experience, whether you're having a bad day or whatever. You can still feel shit, yeah. But I think it does pick you back up in the end. And without that, I would struggle. I think without looking into a deeper nature of reality that's beyond a Bible or beyond the Quran or beyond just what a single book says. I'm talking about coming up with your own truth.
Absolutely. And to me, I think that this is all a game. And the game started, there was this beautiful urn and it's shattered into these pieces. And everyone picked up the piece. Christianity, Buddhism, they're like pieces, but they don't work until you put them all together. And then the whole actually contains the water or whatever it is. But the water doesn't just sit in there. My cup runneth over, right? And so it's all a flow. And perhaps it's not even been a big bang. Perhaps it's all a big flow, and it continues to flow like a cascade. And dimensions are like cascades, like pools. And each pool is a temporal reality that we get to shape our bodies out of. I'm just dreaming. And that's, I think, how we've discovered spirituality. The whole metaphor of the urn breaking into pieces, I think that's what the search is, because we pick up a piece of ourselves, really. And we want to be whole. We want to put it together. But if we can see it all and see that the pieces, so I think that's kind of the journey. It's the search is to find the pieces of the whole, and that's the game. It's like a scavenger hunt. Life. Sometimes you have to go through 3 marriages, to find it.
That's
a clue.
That's so
There's
true.
Another clue.
Yeah.
Oh God, another clue, really.
Well.
Okay, that's all the clues you get lifetime.
Yeah. Oh, it's always ongoing, isn't it? Yeah. Well, what gives you then peace? What helps you? What helps you to decide what you're doing right now is the right thing in your life to do? What clues do you follow? Is it just really as simple as if it feels right, do it, as long as it's not hurting anyone else or yourself?
I think, for me, I know I'm not hurting anyone by any of my actions, and I know my communications are so thorough as much as possible that sometimes they're like, it's not even worth it and I have to let it go. So that's the best that I can do. And you mentioned the word service. Service to me is joy. And if it's not joy, then it's not service, because it's kind of like a beautiful game of giving and re-giving. I mean, if you look, and I actually have in my book, Drowning in a Light, these experiences that I had. One of the experiences was this book that came to me like mysteriously called The Secret of Light. Well, many years later, I'm floating around, driving around America, searching for whatever, and I end up going into what was the home, this incredible villa that was built that Walter Russell lived in, who wrote The Secret of Light. And I find myself like, the caretaker puts me up, and I'd spend the night in the guest bedroom where Nikola Tesla, slept. And these experiences just came to me out of nowhere, out of the joy and the surrender. But the service part of it, and getting to Walter Russell, what I think is really beautiful is he talks about the law of giving and re-giving. And it's kind of like the rain and the clouds. So the clouds give us the rain, it pours down, and then the earth gives it up in vapor, and that's a cycle. It's like the earth, the sun gives us the day, and the earth gives, and the night gives us, but really the pulsation of that one light. If you looked at it in fast motion or high speed photography, you would only see the light. You wouldn't even see the darkness. So that's the place where we need to go and realize it's a constant pulsation, or as Devo said, I'm quoting Devo, it's a wiggly world. You got to wiggle, wiggle, wiggle.
Yes, you do.
It's never straight up. It's never straight up and down.
It's not. It never a straight line.
It's never straight up and down.
No. And would you say that you've followed your intuition quite a bit in life? I mean, is that what served you? Do you think?
Yes. I think that I probably have an ability that instead of putting shingle out in front of my house, psychic, with a crystal ball, I took it into the business world. And, working with people, organizational leaders, with what I called organizational soul intelligence, and you have like a company like McKinsey, and they're buying this stuff, right? Why are they buying it? Because they know that there is an underlying reality. So I did these things for many years, working with people, and what I discovered and what I do now, and my business dream scope really is that everyone is like a unique waveform, that there is no two, and everyone's a diamond in the rough. And I find that the greatest joy that I get, and that's a service, is to see that person, whether it's through their book or media, and to really bring their true gifts. I feel like in a way the soul has a project in all of us. It's like the beautiful Goethe line, don't die with your unfinished music. I know Wayne Dyer got credit. It wasn't him that did it. People just thought because I heard him say it. But really, so to help people bring that out, and the two things, their distinction, and also to make it commercially viable. Because as I said earlier, we have the ability to produce all this media and distribute it globally instantly. But the question is, how can we actually feed ourselves? Which, by the way, my audiobook will be coming out in the next month on a new company called End Hunger Records. And when you download the audiobook, you'll feed 33 people. And when you share that, and you'll see through an app how many people you fed, and you'll see that you can feed thousands of meals just by downloading it. So that's really exciting. And when Drowning in the Light comes out, an audiobook in the next month, we're going to do live events. And the live events, to get into the live event, you download the audiobook. So, these are the things that excite me. Feeding people.
Yeah.
It sucks when you're hungry.
It absolutely. And I think before you can help...
It's hard to do the spiritual work when you're hungry.
It is, but before you can help anyone else, you've got to be able to help yourself. I do feel that unless your cup's overflowing, how can you build? How can you help anyone else? Do you know what I mean? It's and I like what you say as well. When you say about what's of service, it's just really what's of joy to you, which is a natural side effect of being a benefit to others as well. And the universe only knows one word, it seems to, which is yes, I can help you. I think we can be our biggest issue sometimes, where we don't know what we want, and we can walk through life like that for sometimes. For a long time, shall I say, sometimes, just not really tuning into being good, being kind to ourselves, shall I say. I think that's a hard part, isn't it? Sometimes being kind to yourself, to say it's okay. You don't need to keep suffering. Just take the simple steps first, or just I don't know really what I'm trying to say. It just maybe I'm trying to say be kind to yourself, be loving to yourself. I think that's one thing which is the key to this as well.
It's so much the key that all of the service work I did, because for many years that's what I did. I worked as a therapist with kids and all kinds of people for many, many years. I always knew I was doing it not for myself, but that was a gift to me and all the people that I met. And being kind is the most amazing chance to experience, true divinity, because you experience appreciation, and then you see your own divinity. That when people appreciate you, it's like, wow. But yeah, I'm myself. I'm my worst critic, as most people are. There's something that you said though that really, that really touched me and made me think of some things. I think that the reason why we suffer, and I think Buddhism has this right, they at least say this in their own way, that the cause of all suffering is the feeling of separation. And emotionally, the feeling of separation, you know it, because when somebody leaves you, it's like it tearing me apart. It's tearing me apart, right? But when they come together, it's like, I just want to become one with them, whether it's a hug or sexuality or sensuality, it's that feeling of connection. And we have that when we're connected, when we're serving and people appreciate it. It's like that glue. Love is this energy and this vibration of fusion. Where separation is, it's like fission. It's breaking apart. It's tearing me apart. You broke my heart. Oh my God. Yeah, that's what it feels like. And anger is like that too. It's like, you feel like, you're going to explode, okay, or implode. So I think that people need to learn to tap into the emotional energies, and specifically when you're feeling the suffering, that feeling of suffering, know that you're feeling separation, and first connect with yourself, and then reach out and connect with other people. But I think, unfortunately, the systems of our world, specifically I see in the U.S., it's very troubling, and I think it's going to change because I think we are waking up, is the feeling of separation. It's almost like the U.S. culture, American culture, like represents it. It's like, do your own thing, you're on your own. Pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. Well, I don't care if you don't have any boots, go get them. you know, and that creates more separation, and even our economy where we keep people in debt. So I think we have to build global systems that are built upon whole systems, and I think that and these things are more evolved. This is that next stage of evolution that we need to enter. And so I think that there is going to be a massive cleansing over many, many decades of these systems that have been built out of the delusion of separation, which actually is rooted in this mechanistic model of reality. Unlike the experience I had in 4th grade, where I saw everything as a big Jell-O mold, and we were all pieces of fruit, or a big starry alphabet soup.
That's quite deep what you've said there, actually.
Oh, God, I don't know.
No.
Really? It's kid stuff, right?
Yeah. That's so true. I think you might have hit on a big nail there, that a lot of the suffering is due to separation when we feel, and if no one's ever felt that before, well, then they're not going to understand what we're talking about. But I think a lot of people, if they look back into their suffering, it was due to the feeling of separation, whether they want to admit that or they'll think what we're saying is a load of hogwash. I can resonate with what you're saying. I think there's some major truth in that. How do we get past that point, though? You know, if we do feel very isolated, maybe we are isolated. Maybe, you know, the particular career we've taken isolates us. Maybe where we've moved on to isolates us. I think one could say that, or some people could say that, you know, if you're feeling such pain, only you can change it. When that feeling's it's so strong that there's something wrong, only you can go out and make a difference. Law of attraction says that as well. You've got to go out there and do it. Bit of blind faith sometimes as well, one may say. But is that the answer to it? Maybe just going out there and doing and changing that situation. For some that are a bit depressed, they may not be able to do that straight away. I don't know. What would you, in your experience, say? Back to you.
Well, I have all the answers, by the way. If you ever need answers, just call me. I know. I think that the game, if we see this experience from the perspective as a game, there used to be a game called Labyrinth. We had this, it was a wooden box, and you tilt it, and the ball doesn't go in the hole. Well, the ball's going to keep going in the hole until you keep getting good at it. And I think that's what we repeat things. A lot of it, I could get into the neural pathways and programming and all this stuff that would probably be boring. But basically, it is that. It's we actually wire ourselves to our experiences. So if you had experiences of deep separation and pain and suffering, we kind of wire it to come back. So we can kind of go, okay, I'm not going to fall in the hole this time. And realize that we're on our own on this game in the labyrinth, you know, the little ball. And we do have to maneuver ourselves. And it is a choice every moment. But there are no bad choices or wrong choices. There's only like do-overs, because when the ball falls in the hole, you're going to still play the game. But I think the ultimate separation and the ultimate fear, which I have to tell you, I do have that fear because I married my soulmate in 2008, and every morning I wake up with her, and I just talk about gratitude. It's like, I just want this to go on forever. I never want to be apart. And that's deep, deep love, knowing that eventually the two of us will transform or as life does. But that ultimate feeling of separation is death. That's why, that's all the emotions. What happens around death? Anger, sadness, grief. Think of all that. It's all around death. That's what we experience. You know, when we die, when loved ones die, when things die, when your business dies, when you have to go, you know, declare bankruptcy or something like that. And I think this is where we have to all give ourselves a break. Keep putting the ball back on the labyrinth thing. Because you know what? Maybe when the game is over, the next game is even more fun. So I don't think we should be afraid of death. Let's not should. I think our lifetime is a lifetime to, in a way, simulate death every day, which I know a great Sufi prophet said, die now and resurrect.
But it's true.
Because we die a little every day, don't we?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
We do. But
in some way.
So someone that's walking around with that kind of pain, as we're kind of just as a personification, as an idea, right? But I think there's truth in it. This is why I'm going back to it, right? Because I think people watching this can relate to this. Yeah, it's a game. What you're saying there is this, it's a holographic game, isn't it? It's maybe this reality is so not real, but it just feels so goddamn real. Hence, you wouldn't be in the pain if it wasn't such a great game, right? That it feels so real that it blinds us into believing that this is the only reality, so therefore we're forced to feel the pain and we're forced to feel the separation. That maybe actually really, if we just looked at it with different eyes, the eyes that we're coming from in the space of, there's a greater pitch to this, actually you would see that everything's all right, and the pain you're feeling is maybe false evidence appearing real, which is what fear is called, which is what I call fear. Maybe, and like you say, even when you're with someone, you still got to fear that because you found that perfection, that what you've been looking for so long, you're then bloody fearful that you're going to lose it. So either when you get it, it's not so great, and when you've not got it, it's not so great. But there has to be a balance somewhere, and is that coming from why me and you are both into spirituality? Because there is a bigger picture, and it's okay.
Absolutely. And the spiritual path really are tools in a way, and I think it's come from religious and just bow your head and whatever, to wait a second, I ain't bowing my head. I want to lift up from this dark sea of unconscious, and I want to touch that divinity, that fire, as you too, still haven't found what I'm waiting for, to touch the flame. And I think that is inside of everyone. And I think everyone has a different path. And we're kind of like sleeper cells, Some people, it's okay to be under the covers. You may have had an exhausting past life, or they may be going simultaneously in holographic reality. But the key is this: the grand paradox is it's all an illusion, and it's all real. And the beauty, I'll just keep quoting the great 70s artists, even though they stole it from Zen. Donovan, first there is a mountain, then there is no mountain, then there is. First there is a mountain, first there is you and I, this is real. I look in the mirror, I'm real. Look in the screen. No, you're a series of dots on the screen, and in reality, you're a series of dots in a holographic projection. But what's real is, if my daughter, something happened to her, that's more real than I'm a holographic projection. So that's the grand paradox. And I think when we start waking up from that, then I think the compassion of the earth experience will transform our reality here, and we'll all kind of get it. And I think that's part of what the quote unquote plan is. But I think people get it when they get it. Right now it's Armageddon. For somebody on planet Earth, every day, it's the end of the world. It's the end of their life. It's the end of their world. It's the end of their neighborhood in Aleppo. It's the end of wherever you want to go. That's real, and that's an illusion. But when you see children's body parts scattered along the street in Aleppo, it's tragic, and you do everything in this body, if possible, to stop it. And sometimes it feels like it can't stop. So that's the grand paradox. And I think ultimately it comes down to surrender is selfless. You lose yourself because yourself is just a momentary identity, whether it's 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, or 100 years. It's just time. And that identity will dissolve.
Yeah. So you would
go somewhere else.
Yeah, or go somewhere else. Yeah. So you say surrender's part of the one of the keys here as well, just to surrender to just everything the way it is.
To death.
To death, yeah.
To death. I mean, I had to actually do it last year. That I wouldn't be here. I would be working on another book, doing that kind of work. I wouldn't be telling a story. I'm telling a story because I think this is a story that we all know, which is when you come close to death and you're madly in love with your life, even if people that commit suicide unsuccessfully, which is successful that they didn't commit suicide, they get it too. They didn't want that. But so we're driven to that place. But ultimately, when we leave here, as Ram Dass so eloquently says, leaving this world is like taking off a pair of very, very tight shoes. But for now, man, it's a great journey, and I'm not even thinking about it. I'm sleeping with my shoes on.
No,
well, not really.
Yeah. But you can do. But yeah, well, I agree with the quote that you've just used there. I agree with all the quotes. Actually, they're really, really good. They're really great quotes. But you know, it still can be difficult day to day. Some days are better than others, aren't they? Some days are better than others.
Some days are better than others, but if you've got to the place where first there is a mountain, first is your life, now there is no mountain. You don't know what your life is. You don't know what anything is. Everything seems meaningless. Just stay there. Just be with that. It's okay not to know what's going on, not to know what your purpose is, because sometimes we're in the void. It's just part of the journey. And I think what I share in this book that people love so much is the vulnerability, they say, because I didn't just have, they talk about like your dark night of your soul. I have quite a few in there. I had to like pick them, like which dark night of the soul goes in this chapter. But you know what? That's where the most spiritual experience perhaps may be in the read and why I'm sharing it. Otherwise, you know, I could say, oh, I went and I stood on the mountain and I felt all this amazing energy and I felt connected. And I'd be like, you know, right?
Yeah. Well,
I make it more interesting because I can't help it to share the deepest place in me without any edit. No need to edit.
I mean, hats off to you for that. And you know, I think you probably would say as well that looking at the dark side of the New Age, some people hate the word New Age. Do you know that? They really hate the word New Age. But by looking at it, because there is a dark side to it as well, I think. Because everyone's got a different truth, haven't they? I mean, there's no one truth, is there?
They do.
No one truth.
They don't. And I examine in this book. It's fun. People find it really hysterical, and it should be because it is funny. My experience from New York underground, Soho, artist world, and all that, to planting myself on the West Coast to Marin County, north of San Francisco in the 80s, and everyone's name. Oh, what's your name? I'm Ecstasy Waterfall. Oh, hi. And this is my husband, Angel Lightworker. It'd be like, oh, okay. I guess this is what people do here. And so actually, there's a lot of joy in telling those stories and the harmonic convergence and the fact that I worked on a movie and some books all around 2012 because I've been, you know, in this business and my end of the last chapter in the book is December 21st, 2012, the end of the New Age. So yes, it didn't end, and it's always new and it's always evolving. And maybe we did actually go through a huge cycle,
maybe
that, you know, like a turn on a spiral. But regardless, I think that the primary message, if there is a message at all in Drowning in the Light, is if you find yourself drowning in the light, just breathe.
Yeah.
Just breathe.
Yeah. Because that's all you can do sometimes, isn't it? Is just breathe.
Even when you're dead, keep breathing. Remember this. You're out of your body. You're dead. Everyone told you. You're looking at the doctors. They're all down there. Keep breathing. It's like a TV. You know, it's like the TV. Where are all the shows? They all exist on different channels. So I imagine if this is a good show, you're going to just keep enjoying it somewhere.
Or it's
Still happening.
or we're a comedy channel for some distant off world galaxy somewhere. Oh look, the human channel,
Absolutely.
the human channel's on. Let's watch that. Let's have a laugh. Yeah, yeah. So okay, now I mean, it's there's something about. See, you had your awakening in a sense. I mean, I might be wrong. Tell me if I'm wrong, but in New York, I think it was. That's where your awakening.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I feel very drawn to go there just recently. And when I come to America, I might stay in New York. There's something about New York, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. I think New York is that we have yin and yang power centers. So, like, if you go on the top of Mount Shasta or Machu Picchu, these places where I've spent the night, yes, you become very expanded and you can imagine you're seeing angels or spaceships. But when you're in New York, so that's a yin, it expands. Or like, so expansion. But the yang are compression. So New York, you go down, down into the subway, go down to the underground, and everything is there because it's all compressed, all matter. 50,000 versions of gluten-free ice cream. So, everything you want is there.
Oh, do you know what?
But then you can get lost because you're in these canyons of steel and glass, and you're looking up and saying, "Is there nature?" But it's beautiful. I mean, that's why there's so much art, and Los Angeles has its own, beauty to it.
It does.
All in cars.
Yes.
It's like New York with cars.
Yeah. No, you're so right. It actually does in that respect. You're right. That's a good way of putting it, actually. Now after that, I think I'm going to go to Sedona instead. Yeah. But no, Sedona's another one. I'm just joking. Sedona's another one as well. That's got that.
Well, on my journey from New York in the book, I take you on that journey to California where very weird things happen. And one of them is I'm sleeping in the desert and I wake up in the middle of the night to pee. And I see this flashing green light, and it disappeared. May have been my first UFO, but to me it was like flashing green light was like, go. And I see that green light. So,
Well, absolutely, because in your art days, you did feel that there was, I think this is from my memory about the book back in the 70s, when you had an art show on, that it was about ET communication. Now, that was quite newish back then, I think, really, and you actually did feel that in your awakening you were receiving messages or downloads.
I lived down in Soho, and if anyone knew me back in the late 70s, I would sit out there with an electronic keyboard thing making noise, and I actually had a show I write about it in the book, Extraterrestrial Communications, at the Nansen Gallery on Worcester Street, which became defunct when Soho became too expensive. And the art galleries don't even exist here anymore. But in that show, yes, and my great story is when I'm walking on my way to the gallery, and John and Yoko pull up in a limousine, and they're gallery hopping, and they're across the street, and I'm standing there in the gallery. I'm like, they're walking across, and I'm all ready to say, okay, this is my moment, John. I'm connected to the spaceship. It was like, wow, that would be really weird. So years later, I'm listening to the song. It was an outtake. Nobody ever told me. And one of the lines is, there's UFOs over New York and I ain't too surprised. And then I find a video on YouTube with John Lennon saying, I saw one right above my window here. It was flashing lights. So
yes,
it's all an amazing mystery, And are they really UFOs from another planet or,
Well, again,
DMT in the water in New York.
Yeah, we'll soon find out. Well, I interviewed a lady called May Pang, which when John had his UFO experience, she was with him at the time because him and Yoko had separated, and he was now with May. And May says that they did have a UFO experience together in his apartment, out the window, and it changed his take on reality, which changed her take on reality apparently.
I would love to send her a copy of my book. So.
Yeah, well, I think it's maypang.com. I think that's her website. I'll send you it off air, most definitely. Okay, well, I know we're 58 minutes into the interview now, and we're a little bit over. But one thing I'd like to ask you as well is, your opinion on when we resist issues in our life, because that's been coming to me as well. When sometimes we don't always take the easy path, do we? Some of us. And some of us, will love to go the hard way and do it the hard way and go with resistance. But that does have an overall negative effect on us, doesn't it, in a sense?
Well, you're speaking my language. When I first started taking all this spiritual influx that came to me, and I started going deep into physics and researching all kinds of ancient scriptures and things, I found all these clues, and I put them in my book, which actually, for somebody on into higher spiritual knowledge, I mean, it's packed with it, because I spent years going deep and researching. From my experience, I would have experiences, but what I discovered is this one thing, because I was looking at how energy flows, and ordinarily electrons bounce around and collide and create electrical resistance, which, if you cook on an electric stove, that's what electrical resistance is, cooking your food in. But resistance equals stress, and stress equals breakdown. And what I discovered in superconductivity, they eliminate the electrical resistance. Electrons flow in a smooth and fluid way, which eliminates stress and mechanical breakdown. If you take that model, which that was the work I did when I was off to McKinsey in Australia and teaching them the corporate, leaders so they can work with the CEOs and the companies, because I saw that this principle applied to anything, to an organization, to an individual. When you resist it, you create stress, and that creates breakdown. So if you resist feeling, it can stress you, and then that stress actually can stress a relationship. Like two people in a relationship, like the traditional man that's resisting his emotions, and a woman is like, he just won't open up his, he won't feel. Like, can you feel what I'm feeling? And you keep resisting it. Now there's stress. You keep resisting it. And it's like, well, fuck you. I'm over it. Break up. Resistance equals stress. Stress equals now, right here, I'll give it to you right with the breath. When you feel the resistance, like, oh, I don't really want to go there. Oh, my God. Just breathe it in. You're there. It's not that big a deal. Like when I was getting, what do you call it? Well, I had IVs. I've had like 20 or 30 IVs in me. You're just there. You can't resist it. You can't move your arms because you got AVs in it. And you just, okay, so this is flowing through me, platelets from thousands of people. No resistance. Because I start stressing, oh my God, what if that blood is tainted? Well, I'm going to die if I don't get it. So, and sometimes we just have to let go of all the stuff in our mind, including even the fear of death. And there's no resistance. And it's just not easy. It's the hardest thing. But if you do it in your breath, just breathe into it. That's how you shift it energetically, because we're actually breathing and conducting electricity with each breath. So as you breathe in, you're breathing in electricity into the cells. It's transporting. The cells are made of, the cytoplasm of the cells are liquid crystal, like the liquid crystal in the computer screen. They're absorbing information. So that's why that lower attraction, you breathe it in. Right. And you let go of all the stuff. And then you're smooth. And you can do that in anything. Just let go in the breath. Don't control it. It's the simplest thing.
And you can, and the point for this as well is that you can apply this into any situation.
Anything.
No matter
anytime.
What the situation, yeah.
That's what the police tell you to do, or the EMT on an emergency. They come to the scene of the accident, whatever. Just take a breath. Because once you do that, you bring life energy into the body. And when we're in shock, or the worst is stress, chronic stress, constantly we're running those hormones and the energy is not flowing. So what happens in a pool when energy isn't flowing? It's all energy. It becomes stagnant and stuff breeds in it.
No, so true, so true. With that, I just wanted to add that before, because I know there's some things we haven't discussed that's in this book, because obviously we're under an hour. It's just impossible. But I just wanted to get that in there because I think that's important as well. Well, you've pretty answered this, but I've just got to ask you it one more time because I think it's just good to reiterate it. What would you say is the most important message of your book?
I think in the moment, because I never thought about the most important message of my book, is enjoy the journey. Even when you hit the dark places, the light's in you. You kind of have to like have that headlamp, and you're walking through the dark fog of the world. But then when it becomes brighter, other people, you shine the way for other people, and we navigate our way through it. It's like the ray of light that shines through when you go to the beach and it's cloudy and it's that one shaft of light. Be that in the cloud cover of the world. And the book starts, this is the message of the book. It could have been one page. It's the first page in the prologue. When you're walking along the beach and the sun is behind you and you look in the sand in front of you, all you see is your shadow. You keep walking in that direction and your shadow will always be in front of you. You're walking in your shadow. You're walking into your shadow. But if you turn around, flip yourself around and stare directly, face the sun and look down below, there is no shadow. There's only light because you are that. So there you go. That's where the prologue ends up.
Yeah.
And once and after the prologue, you're going into the dark realm of the New Age.
Look, I thought that was one of the that what you've just said there was very meaningful, and that was one of that was a deep answer. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Just rip the first page of the book out in the bookstore, and you got the whole thing.
You've got the whole thing. Yeah.
Send me the check.
Exactly. Okay, well, the book is available from all good book outlets, and if they keep in contact,
Amazon under I.J. Rosen. That's my pen name. I.J. Rosen, Drowning in the Light. Amazon.
Right. Will the audiobook be available on Amazon as well?
The audiobook is being exclusively released on End Hunger Records,
so
which is launching we're really kind of relaunching the whole thing with the audiobook. Music was written for it. It's really, really great. And the cool thing is this is the first release of a record label, albums and audiobooks. So if you go to End Hunger Records, all three words as one, End Hunger Records is 2 R's, .com, just sign up because soon we're launching.
Right.
And when you launch with this, we're going to feed thousands of people. You buy it, you download it, you listen to it, you say, you share it online, say, I just downloaded I.J. Rosen's book, Drowning in the Light. Somebody else does it, let it go. You have the app, you look back, maybe in a week or two, 4,500 people were fed. This is why I wrote this book. Now I know why I wrote it.
Yeah.
I wrote it not just to feed people's soul or their mind, but actually feed people that are hungry, and we can do that. We can make it up, right? We can do whatever we want.
Of course we can.
What we want, so.
Of course we can. Well, I'd just like to say thank you so much, and Gerard Rosen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on your show. It's been really fun. I'll be back anytime you want. Back for more.
Well, we've come to an end on tonight's show. Don't forget that you can listen and watch all our past interviews on the More Show's official YouTube channel. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new daily shows. You may also find out more on all past and upcoming guests on the show via themoreshow.com, and do like us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates. So until next time, be safe.